Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
My younger brother just turned 18 and got his driver's license 2 months ago. Instead of getting a job and saving up like I did, he decided that my car was now magically our car. At first, I didn't think much of it. He's in college, and I figured helping him out occasionally was just what big siblings do. It started innocent enough. He'd ask to borrow it for quick trips to pick up textbooks or meet with study groups. I'd tell him sure, just make sure he had it back by a certain time since I needed it for work. He'd promise no problem and thank me, but then the requests got more frequent and longer. He'd ask for the car to go to study groups that were supposed to end at 10 or 11, but he'd roll in at midnight, sometimes later. I started getting nervous about having my car back in time for my shifts. My manager had already warned everyone about being late too many times. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning. I had to be at work by 7 for inventory day, basically the most important day not to miss. I set my alarm for 6, planning to grab coffee and get there early to make a good impression. I walked outside and my parking spot was empty. Just empty asphalt staring back at me. I called him immediately and asked where my car was. He gave me some sarcastic good morning greeting, so I cut through that and demanded to know where my car was since I had to be at work in an hour. He told me to relax, that he'd just borrowed it to go to some late-night diner with friends and he'd be back soon. I told him I needed to leave right now, not soon. He actually suggested I should just call in sick or something. I asked if he was insane because I couldn't just call in because he'd stolen my car. He got defensive and said he hadn't stolen anything, that I wasn't using it, and that family should share. I had to call my co-worker to pick me up, which was embarrassing since we barely knew each other outside of work. I spent the entire day fuming while restocking shelves. When I got home that evening, he was playing video games in the living room like nothing happened. I told him we needed to talk. He gave me a half-hearted apology about the morning, but said I was being dramatic because the car was just sitting there doing nothing. I explained that it was sitting there because I was sleeping so I could wake up for work. You know, that thing that pays for the car he keeps borrowing. He brushed me off and said that family should share things. That's how it works. I decided to test his logic. I told him fine, if he wanted to share the car, he could share in the insurance payments and repair costs. My next insurance payment was $200. He actually laughed at me and said that was my responsibility as the owner. I pointed out the contradiction. I was the owner, but apparently not the person who got to control when it was used. He just told me not to be like this and reminded me that he was my brother. That night, I made a decision. I drove to the dealership where I bought the car and asked about getting a spare key reprogrammed. The guy behind the counter looked confused when I explained I wanted the current keys to stop working. He asked if I wanted to disable the existing keys and program new ones, and I said exactly. When he asked how long it would take, he said about an hour but seemed concerned, saying this was usually something people did when their keys were stolen. I told him this was necessary. I didn't tell my brother about the new keys. I acted completely normal for the next few days, even letting him borrow the car once during the day when I didn't need it. He had no idea what was coming. Friday night, I went to bed early since I had to open the store on Saturday morning. Around 2 in the morning, I heard footsteps in the driveway. I smiled and pretended to stay asleep. A few minutes later, I heard the car alarm going off like the gates of hell had opened in our driveway. It was one of those ear-splitting alarms that goes on and on until you turn it off with a key fob. Except his key didn't work anymore. The alarm wailed for about 5 minutes before I heard him running back to the house. He burst in asking what the hell was wrong with my car because the alarm wouldn't turn off and it wouldn't start. I got up and walked outside in my pajamas, pressed the button on my new key fob, and the alarm stopped immediately. I told him it seemed to be working fine for me. He said he'd used the same key he always used, sounding completely confused. I explained that I'd had that key reprogrammed and reminded him that this was my car, the one I pay insurance and maintenance for. He said I couldn't do that and it wasn't fair. I told him what wasn't fair was him taking my car without asking and leaving me stranded when I had work. What wasn't fair was him acting like he owned something he didn't pay for. He played the family card again, saying we were supposed to help each other. I explained that family doesn't leave family stranded when they need to get to work, that family asks permission before borrowing things, and that family offers to help with expenses if they want to share benefits. He stood there for a moment, probably realizing his friends had just watched him get completely shut down by a car alarm. Finally, he said fine, whatever, and that he'd just get mom and dad to buy him his own car. I told him good luck with that. Our parents had been pretty clear that if he wanted a car, he needed to get a job and start contributing. They'd done the same thing with me, and they weren't about to change their approach now. The next morning he was still pouting, but he didn't say anything about the car. Over the next few weeks, he started taking the bus more and asking friends for rides. He even started talking about getting a part-time job. Once he realized he couldn't just take my car whenever he wanted, he started being more respectful when he actually needed to borrow it. Now he asks in advance, offers to pay for gas, and always has it back when he promises. Just yesterday, he asked if he could possibly borrow the car for a job interview, explaining it was at the new restaurant by the mall and he'd definitely have it back on time. When I said sure, he immediately offered to fill up the gas tank if he used more than a quarter tank. It's amazing how a little car alarm can teach someone the difference between sharing and taking. He hasn't touched my car without permission since that night. And honestly, our relationship is better now that we both understand boundaries. Plus, he's about to have his own car soon with the money from his new job. After months of searching and going through interviews, I finally had steady work with good benefits. The position was at a local government agency managing their vehicle fleet. My job involved driving the agency's cars to various places like repair shops, tire companies, glass repair centers, and inspection stations. I also did basic maintenance myself, things like replacing headlights, tail lights, and turn signals. But the biggest part of my job was keeping the fleet clean and ready for use. Every single car had to be hand-washed inside and out, which meant scrubbing the exterior, vacuuming the interior, wiping down all surfaces, and cleaning the windows until they sparkled. I also had to check and refill the windshield washer fluid, make sure the first aid kit was stocked, verify that the emergency reflectors were in place, and ensure each vehicle had all the required paperwork and equipment. The whole process for one car took between 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how dirty it was and what needed to be done. Some days I'd finish a car at 3:45 and head home early. Other days, if I started washing a car at 3:30, I might not finish until 4:15 or 4:20. The job came with flexible hours, which made perfect sense given the nature of the work. For the first month, everything went smoothly. I was getting through about 6 to 8 cars per day, the fleet was looking great, and my supervisor seemed happy with my work. Then one Tuesday morning he called me into his office. He told me he needed to discuss my work schedule. I asked if there was a problem since I thought I was meeting all the targets. He said I was doing the work properly, but he had noticed I was taking advantage of the flexible hours. He pointed out that some days I left at 3:45, while other days I didn't leave until after 4:20. I explained that this happened because some cars took longer to clean than others, and I didn't want to leave a job half finished. He said he understood, but that we needed consistency. He announced that from now on, I needed to stop working at exactly 4 p.m. with no exceptions. I was confused, but decided not to argue. After all, he was the boss, and I was still new to the job. I asked him to clarify that he wanted me to stop whatever I was doing at 4 p.m. sharp. He confirmed that was exactly what he meant, and emphasized that I should stop taking advantage of the flexible schedule. The next day, I started following his new rule exactly. When 3:15 p.m. rolled around, I looked at my watch and calculated whether I had enough time to start another car. Since each car took at least 45 minutes, I realized I didn't have enough time to finish one properly before the 4 p.m. deadline. Instead of starting a car I couldn't finish, I spent the remaining time doing other tasks. I swept the garage floor, organized the supply closet, restocked cleaning supplies, and did some paperwork. At exactly 4 p.m., I clocked out and went home. This went on for about 3 weeks. Every day after 3:15 p.m., I'd switch to these smaller tasks instead of starting another car. I was following his instructions perfectly. I stopped working at exactly 4 o'clock p.m. every single day. Then one morning I got another call to come to his office. He said we needed to discuss my productivity because the number of cars I was completing each day had dropped significantly. I asked if it really had dropped, mentioning that I'd been working until exactly 4 o'clock p.m. every day just like he asked. He confirmed that yes, I was only finishing 5 or 6 cars instead of 7 or 8, like before. I told him that was because I was following his policy about not taking advantage of the flexible hours. He asked what I meant by that. I explained that since he said I had to stop at exactly 4 o'clock p.m. and each car took 45 minutes to an hour, if it was past 3:15, I didn't have enough time to start another one and finish it by 4 o'clock. So instead, I did other tasks. I watched his face and realization hit him. He sat back in his chair and was quiet for a long moment. He asked if, when I was working past 4 o'clock p.m. before, I was finishing cars I had started earlier. I confirmed that was exactly right. I explained that some days I'd finish early and leave at 3:45, while other days I needed an extra 15 or 20 minutes to complete the job properly. It averaged out over the week. He then asked if I was now stopping work on cars at 3:15 to make sure I didn't go past 4 o'clock. I confirmed that was correct and that I was following his policy exactly. He rubbed his forehead and looked at the productivity reports on his desk. He said he could see the problem now. By making me stop at exactly 4 o'clock, he had actually created a situation where less work got done overall. I agreed that it seemed that way. He admitted that I had been working smart before. He realized that starting a car at 3:30 and finishing it at 4:15 made more sense than stopping at 3:15 and doing busy work for 45 minutes. I told him I had thought so too, but I wanted to follow his instructions. He was quiet again for another moment, clearly thinking through the situation. He said he owed me an apology. He explained that when he saw me leaving at different times, he had assumed I was slacking off or taking advantage of the system. He admitted he didn't realize I was actually being more efficient. I told him I understood the confusion and that from the outside, it might have looked like I was being inconsistent. He said no, that he should have asked me to explain before making assumptions. He acknowledged that my way was working better for everyone. The cars were getting done properly, and the overall productivity was higher. I asked what he would like me to do going forward. He told me to go back to how I was doing it before. He said I should start cars whenever it made sense and take whatever time I needed to finish them properly. He admitted he was wrong to change a system that was working. I said I could do that and thanked him for understanding. He thanked me for following his policy, even though it didn't make sense, saying it showed him exactly why my original approach was better. From that day forward, I went back to my flexible schedule. Some days I left at 3:45, other days I stayed until 4:20, but the cars got done properly and efficiently. My boss never complained about my hours again, and we actually developed a good working relationship after that. I stayed at that job for 2 more years, and we got along great the entire time. He even gave me excellent references when I eventually moved on to a different position. I live alone in a small apartment downtown and work as a librarian. About 2 years ago, I found this beautiful orange tabby cat hiding under my car during a thunderstorm. He was soaking wet, skinny as a rail, and clearly had been living on the streets for a while. I took him in, got him checked out by the vet, and discovered he wasn't microchipped. After posting flyers and checking with local shelters for weeks, with no response, I officially adopted him and named him Ginger. Ginger became my whole world. He's incredibly friendly and social, which makes sense since he probably lived with a family before ending up on the streets. He loves meeting new people and has this adorable habit of rolling over on his back when strangers approach, basically demanding belly rubs. I take him on walks around the neighborhood using a harness and leash, and he's become quite the local celebrity. Everyone knows Ginger. On the day this whole mess happened, I was taking Ginger for his usual afternoon walk around the park near my apartment. It was a beautiful Saturday. and the park was busy with families having picnics and kids running around on the playground. Ginger was in his element, soaking up attention from passers-by and being his charming self. We were sitting on a bench when this woman approached with her son, who looked to be about 8 years old. The kid immediately got excited when he saw Ginger and asked his mom if he could pet him. I told him of course he could, since Ginger loves meeting new people. The kid was gentle and sweet with Ginger, who was purring up a storm and doing his signature belly roll move. Everything seemed normal until the mother started getting ideas. She complimented what a beautiful and well-behaved cat Ginger was. I thanked her and said he was a real sweetheart. Then she mentioned that her son had been begging for a pet forever, but they couldn't get one because of their lease. She said this cat seemed perfect for him. I started to get an uneasy feeling about where this conversation was heading. I explained that Ginger had been with me for 2 years and was definitely not available. She pushed back, saying that I should look at how much her son loved him, and that I was just one person while a growing boy needs a companion like this. I told her that I understood her son liked Ginger, but he was my cat and not for sale or adoption. That's when things took a turn for the worse. The woman's whole demeanor changed, and she got this look in her eyes that I can only describe as pure entitlement. She called me selfish and said that one person doesn't need a cat this social. She claimed he'd be much better off with a family. I had to stop her right there and tell her that this was my pet, and the conversation was over. I started to pack up Ginger's things and put his leash back on, but the woman wasn't done. She asked how much I wanted for him and said she'd pay whatever it takes. I told her he wasn't for sale and asked her to leave us alone. She insisted that everything has a price and demanded I name it. I said no and told her we were leaving. I stood up and started walking away, but she followed us. She yelled that I couldn't just walk away from her and that she was trying to make a reasonable offer. I told her there was no offer and to stop following us. That's when things escalated beyond anything I could have imagined. This woman, apparently frustrated that she couldn't buy my cat like he was some object at a yard sale, pulled out a small canister from her purse. She declared that if I wouldn't sell him to her, then maybe I didn't deserve to keep him. Before I could react, she sprayed pepper spray directly at Ginger. My poor cat let out the most horrible yowl I'd ever heard and started thrashing around, trying to get away from whatever was burning his eyes and nose. I was furious, absolutely seeing red. But Ginger, despite being partially blinded and in pain, was even more angry than I was. He launched himself at this woman like a furry missile, claws extended and teeth bared. What happened next was basically karma in fast forward. Ginger latched onto her arm with his claws and bit down hard. She started screaming and trying to shake him off, but he wasn't letting go. In her panic, she stumbled backward and fell, with Ginger still attached to her arm. He finally let go and ran back to me, still pawing at his face from the pepper spray. She screamed that my cat had attacked her and demanded I look at what he did to her arm. I shot back that she had pepper sprayed him first and asked what she expected would happen. She was bleeding from several deep scratches and had obvious bite marks on her forearm. Her son was crying, probably more from seeing his mom get attacked by a cat than from not getting a pet. She threatened to call the police and claimed my vicious animal had attacked her unprovoked. I told her to go ahead and said I was sure they'd be very interested to hear about how she pepper sprayed someone's pet because they wouldn't sell it to her. Several other park visitors had gathered around by this point, and thankfully, a few of them had seen the whole thing unfold. One witness said they saw everything and that she had sprayed the poor cat first. Another agreed and called the woman crazy, saying the cat was just defending itself. Karen seemed to realize that she wasn't going to get any sympathy from the crowd that had formed. She was still bleeding and obviously in pain. She declared that she was going to the hospital and then suing me for everything I was worth, calling my cat dangerous. I told her good luck with that since she had assaulted my pet first. She walked off with her crying son, leaving me to deal with poor Ginger, who was still suffering from the pepper spray. I immediately took him to the emergency vet clinic where they flushed his eyes and nose and gave him something for the pain. The vet said he'd be fine but might have some temporary irritation for a few days. I also called the police myself to report what had happened. just in case this woman actually followed through on her threats. The officer who took my statement said that based on the witness accounts, it was clear that the woman had initiated the incident by pepper spraying my cat, and that Ginger was just defending himself. He said if she tried to pursue any legal action, I shouldn't worry too much about it. For the next few weeks, I was honestly a bit nervous about potential lawsuits or legal troubles, but nothing ever came of it. I never saw that entitled woman or her son again, though I did hear that she had to get several stitches and a tetanus shot at the hospital. Ginger became even more of a local celebrity after word got around about how he defended himself against some crazy woman who tried to steal him. Now when we go on our walks, people always ask about the hero cat and give him extra treats and attention. The woman's threats about suing me turned out to be completely empty, just like I suspected they would be. When you pepper spray someone's pet because you want to steal it, you don't really have much legal ground to stand on when that pet fights back. Ginger recovered completely within a few days and hasn't shown any lasting trauma from the incident. If anything, he seems even more confident and social than before, like he knows he's a badass who can handle himself in a crisis. Some people really have no shame or common sense. Some background first. I'm a 37-year-old mom with an 8-year-old daughter and a 31-year-old husband who apparently never learned basic parenting skills. My daughter has always had challenging hair. It's thick, curly, and tangles if you so much as look at it wrong. When I was a stay-at-home mom, I could keep up with a daily brushing and styling routine. But 6 months ago, I started working full-time at a marketing firm. Between adjusting to work schedules, commuting, and trying to maintain some semblance of a household, I'll admit her hair care slipped through the cracks. My husband has never once offered to help with her hair. Not once. He'll make her breakfast sometimes and drive her to school when I can't. But anything involving actual care or effort is apparently my job alone. When I've asked him to help brush her hair in the mornings, he always says he doesn't know how to do girl hair, and that I'm better at that stuff. This has been going on for months. Her hair got progressively more tangled and matted, especially at the back where she sleeps on it. I felt terrible about it, but between work deadlines and everything else, I kept putting off the major detangling session I knew it needed. Last weekend, my friend came over. She used to be a hairstylist before becoming a teacher, so she knows her way around difficult hair. When she saw my daughter's condition, she didn't judge me. She just rolled up her sleeves and suggested we have a spa day to make her hair beautiful. My daughter was excited. We set up in the living room with movies, snacks, and every hair product I owned. It took us 4 hours. 4 solid hours of careful detangling, deep conditioning treatments, and gentle brushing. My friend worked magic. She got every single knot out without causing too much discomfort. My daughter was so patient through it all. She only cried a little when we hit the worst tangles, but she kept talking about how excited she was to show Daddy her pretty hair. That broke my heart because I knew how much she wanted his approval. When we finished, her hair looked absolutely stunning. It was smooth, shiny, and styled in lovely loose curls. My daughter was practically glowing with happiness. She kept touching it and admiring herself in the mirror, saying she looked like a princess and that Daddy was going to love it. My friend and I were so proud. We'd spent the entire afternoon making my little girl feel beautiful, and it showed. She was practically bouncing with excitement to show her father. My husband came home from his golf game around dinner time. My daughter ran to the door to greet him, spinning around to show off her hair. She excitedly told him to look at her hair and asked if it was pretty. And this is where everything went wrong. Instead of complimenting her, instead of acknowledging the obvious time and effort that went into making her look so nice, he took one look at her and asked what was wrong with her hair, saying it looked weird. The change in my daughter was instant. Her face fell, her shoulders slumped, and she just stared at him in shock. Then the tears started. Big, heartbroken sobs while she ran to her bedroom. I was furious. My friend looked horrified and quickly excused herself, probably sensing the fight that was about to happen. I demanded to know what the hell was wrong with him. He said he was just asking what she did to it because it looked different. I told him that different doesn't mean wrong and that she was so excited to show him, but he crushed her. He claimed he didn't mean to upset her and was just surprised. I told him he needed to grow up and learn to be a better father. I explained that our daughter spent 4 hours getting her hair fixed because he's never once helped with it, and the first thing he did was criticize her appearance. That's when he got defensive. He said he works all week and is tired when he gets home. I reminded him that I work too and still find time to take care of our daughter. He insisted he didn't say anything that bad and that I was being dramatic. I explained that he told an 8-year-old girl that something was wrong with her appearance when she was excited to show him how pretty she looked. He brushed it off, saying I was making a big deal out of nothing and that kids bounce back. I told him again that he needed to grow up and learn how to be a father. I said this wasn't about bouncing back, this was about him being supportive and kind to his own child. He got angry and said I had crossed the line by telling him how to be a father. I shot back that someone had to, since he'd clearly never figured it out himself. He walked off to the garage after that, probably to sulk and avoid dealing with a crying child upstairs. I went to comfort my daughter, who was still sobbing into her pillow. I told her that her hair looked absolutely beautiful and that she looked like a princess. She said Daddy told her it looks wrong. I assured her that Daddy was wrong to say that and that her hair was gorgeous. I said I was so proud of how patient she was while we fixed it. It took another hour to calm her down. She kept asking why Daddy didn't like her hair, and I didn't know what to tell her. How do you explain to a child that sometimes adults say thoughtless things that hurt people's feelings? The next morning, my husband acted like nothing happened. He made coffee and tried to kiss me goodbye before work like it was any other day. I asked if he was going to apologize to his daughter. He asked for what? I reminded him about hurting her feelings about her hair. He said I was being dramatic and that she was fine. But she wasn't fine. She asked me 3 times while getting ready for school if her hair still looked weird. I had to convince her not to wear a hat to cover it up. When I got to work, I was still steaming about the whole thing. My coworker asked what was wrong, and when I told her the story, she was appalled. She said that I didn't cross any line. He did when he made his daughter cry over something she was proud of. That evening, my husband tried to act normal again, but I was having none of it. I told him he was going to apologize to our daughter. He said he wasn't apologizing for having an opinion. I explained that his opinion made his child cry, and that should matter to him. He accused me of trying to control what he says in his own house. I said I was trying to protect our daughter from unnecessary cruelty. We went back and forth like this for 20 minutes. He kept insisting he did nothing wrong, and that I was overreacting. I told him that if he couldn't see how he hurt his daughter's feelings, and if he thought I was out of line for defending her, then maybe he needed to think about what kind of father he wanted to be. I said that right now he was failing at it. That hit home. He got quiet and actually looked uncomfortable for the first time since this whole thing started. He admitted he didn't mean to make her cry. I explained that intent doesn't matter. Impact does. I told him she was so excited to show him her beautiful hair, and he crushed that excitement. He finally went upstairs to talk to our daughter. I could hear him through the door apologizing about what he said about her hair yesterday. He told her it looked very pretty. She asked if he really thought it was pretty, and he said yes and that he was sorry he hurt her feelings. It wasn't the most eloquent apology, but it was something. My daughter seemed satisfied with it, and they spent some time reading together before bed. Later that night, he came to me and admitted I was right. He said he should have complimented her instead of questioning it. I agreed that, yes, he should have. He said he guessed he needed to think more before he spoke. I told him he needed to think about her feelings, period, explaining that she looks up to him so much, and his words carry weight with her. My daughter deserves a father who builds her up instead of tearing her down, even unintentionally. My dad passed away 3 months ago after a long battle with cancer. It's been rough on all of us, especially my mom who was married to him for 42 years. We decided to have him cremated, and today was finally the day we were going to enter his ashes in the family plot where my brother and mom are buried. Yeah, you read that right. My mom died 2 years ago in a car accident, and my younger brother died in Afghanistan 6 years back. I'm basically the last one left from my immediate family. The whole morning had been emotional. My wife tried to be supportive, but she could see I was barely holding it together. My kids, who are teenagers, were trying to be strong for me, but they loved their grandfather. Even my in-laws wanted to be there, but they're both dealing with health issues and couldn't make the trip. So there I was, dressed in my white shirt and black tie, heading to the flower shop to pick up arrangements. Not just one, I needed 3 separate bouquets. One from my wife and me, one from my kids, and one from my in-laws who asked me to get something on their behalf since they couldn't be there. I walked into the shop feeling like I was moving through fog. Everything felt surreal. The florist was busy with other customers, so I had to wait in line. That's when I noticed this older woman in front of me with her husband. This woman was something else. She was probably in her 60s, well dressed, and had this attitude like she owned the place. But what really got to me was how loud she was being about everyone else in the shop. She started pointing at a man looking at smaller flower arrangements and announced loudly that he was clearly a cheapskate whose wife would be disappointed with such a small gesture. Her voice carried across the entire shop when she made her judgment. Her husband looked embarrassed and kept trying to get her to quiet down, but she wasn't having any of it. Next, she turned her attention to a young woman selecting roses and declared that the flowers were too expensive for someone her age. She speculated loudly that the girl was probably trying to make up for something her boyfriend had done wrong. I'm standing there holding 3 bouquets, dressed like I'm heading to a funeral because I literally am. And this woman just keeps going. Then she spotted a man near the entrance and announced her theory that he was obviously buying flowers for both his wife and his girlfriend. She went on about how men these days have no shame, speaking when she was some kind of expert on everyone's personal business. Her husband tried again to get her to lower her voice, looking more embarrassed by the minute, but she brushed him off, saying she was just making observations and that people needed to hear the truth sometimes. The whole shop could hear her. Other customers were looking uncomfortable, and I could see the florist was getting annoyed. But I wasn't really processing it all because my mind was on what we were about to do, finally laying my dad to rest with the rest of my family. Then she turned around and looked right at me. I guess she saw the flowers, the formal clothes, and figured she had me all figured out. She looked at me with this smug smile and announced that it looked like someone was in trouble with his wife. She said it like she was so clever for figuring out my situation. I wasn't thinking clearly. I wasn't in the mood for jokes or small talk or anything really. The words just came out flat and emotionless. I told her it was my father's funeral. The change in her face was instant. All that smugness just drained away and she went completely white. Her husband immediately grabbed her arm and said they should leave right away. She started to stammer something about not knowing, but I cut her off and told her that no, she didn't know. Her husband was already pulling her toward the door. She kept looking back at me like she wanted to say something, maybe apologize, but her husband wasn't stopping. He told her they would get flowers somewhere else and kept moving toward the exit. And just like that, they were gone. The whole shop had gone quiet during this exchange, and now everyone was staring at me. The florist came over immediately and apologized for what had happened. She also offered her condolences for my loss and said she would help me with the arrangements right away. The other customers were giving me sympathetic looks, now instead of the curious stares from before. A couple people offered their condolences when I waited. I paid for the flowers and headed to the cemetery. The service was small but meaningful. We said our goodbyes and finally put Dad to rest next to Mom and my brother. It gave me some peace knowing they were all together now. But I keep thinking about that woman. Usually I would have just brushed off her comment, maybe made some joke back. On any other day, I might have even found her commentary amusing in an annoying way. But not today. Today was about grief and loss and saying goodbye to the last parent I had. The thing that gets me is how comfortable she was making judgments about complete strangers. She had no idea what anyone's story was, but she felt entitled to announce her opinions about their personal lives to the entire shop. What if that man looking at cheaper flowers was a college student spending his last $20 on flowers for his sick mother? What if that young girl was buying flowers for a friend's funeral? What if that man by the door was widowed and visiting his wife's grave? People are dealing with things you can't see. Everyone has a story. and most of the time it's more complicated than whatever snap judgment you make based on appearances. She was so confident in her assessment of me too. Trouble with the wife. If only she knew that my wife has been my rock through all of this, and those flowers weren't for making up after a fight, they were for honoring my father's memory. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.